Okay, we are back. What's up, everybody? Drew here, thatanxietyguy.com. Back with Billy in the UK.
Hello.
What's up, Bill?
Again.
Anxietyunited.com.
That's me.
Yes.
That's yes.
Not just in the UK, worldwide. Billy's a global
.com.
phenomenon.
International. Mental health knows no
It
boundaries.
doesn't. Billy's a global phenomenon, and we're going to keep it that way.
Okay.
So today we are going to talk about the topic. We're up to episode 16, by the way. We're on a roll.
Shooting for the stars now.
I know. So today we're going to talk about the topic of triggers, anxiety triggers. So I'm going to give a shout out to Gary, who sent me that question about triggers on YouTube, and we decided this would be a good topic to do. So we're going to talk about it.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
I don't think we've discussed much of the triggers.
No, we really haven't. We've talked about symptoms and all that sort of stuff, but we really haven't talked about triggers. So it's a good topic. Triggers is an interesting topic because they're so wide-ranging, and I think they go from the very obvious to the completely surprising. Like, what the hell did that happen? You know, what happened there?
Yeah. I made a list of a few.
Okay, cool. Let's start.
So we got
the
the main stuff. You've got your work, you've got your relationships, finances, health, and any long-term stress. So they're, the main ones, but they cover so many different things that fall within those categories. But then there's like the weird things, or maybe not so weird, but like just thinking about getting older, being alone, lack of sleep. A big one for me is hunger, meeting new people, and then even more, like, people might think this is out there, but like hearing sirens, different smells or scents, TV shows, certain things that if they're about hospitals and stuff like that. Being far from home and boredom. That was my list.
Boredom?
That was my homework. Yeah.
Okay, boredom is a good one, actually.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty long list.
It was.
You know what? I'd probably have the same list.
Yeah.
I would agree with most of those things.
But there's gonna be so many different things. But I guess it's just, does it really matter what the triggers are? It's how you respond to the triggers.
Yeah, I don't know if it really matters. I think the biggest thing sometimes for me that was hard to deal with a little bit was kind of understanding that almost anything could be a trigger. So I used to be so perplexed. And I know when Gary asked this question, he said, his issue was about what's going on at work for him. It's stressful. He's a tough boss, blah, blah, blah. And I guess it's kicking up his anxiety. And then I actually got a question on Facebook this morning about that. Cody, somebody had mentioned that he ran into a problem, I think driving home or something, where somebody had cut him off. He had a bit of a problem on the road. And he got angry about it, and then it kicked off his anxiety. And he was like, is that normal? Is that kind of
Yeah.
And I would think we'd probably both agree that, the answer is sadly, that's normal.
That's it. It's maybe a stress response. It's a response to just something maybe that's not in your control, I guess. Yeah. But then there are things that are in your control. It's just maybe we bury our heads in the sand too much. That's what my old man used to tell me.
Oh, that's actually not bad. I think I would agree with that. It's a stress response. So I remember years ago, and I think the short answer to the trigger thing is just about anything that puts some sort of stress or pressure on us, no matter how big or small. It could be emotional or mental or physical stress, could lead to the anxiety response, especially when we're in the thick of it and we're like oversensitized and we're a little bit raw. We don't have a lot of resilience. So if you're in the thick of it and you're dealing with anxiety all the time, or you're panicking on a daily basis, you're having a hard time getting out of the house, whatever that is, I think you're more likely to find more things or triggers. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think what winds up happening is, and I actually wrote about this many years ago on Panic Station, I blogged, about why stress becomes fear. And I think that's one of the big things here on triggers, because if you look around us, all the people around us are stressed and feeling bad and almost getting cut off on the road and, having to wait on a line that's too long at the motor vehicles department or something. And you could get stressed and maybe upset about it, but it doesn't turn into fear for them. For some reason.
That's it.
Yeah, for us. And so the trick with the trigger, I think, is how to identify a trigger and try and understand, a stress response is normal. A fear response isn't necessarily normal. And how do we deal with that?
Well, I think I made 3 notes, and there's 3 different steps towards or to do with the triggers. And number 1 is the prevention of triggers. So if it is finances or if it is work, and these are things that you can actually do something about. Okay. So, you could look for another job if it's that bad, or you could check your finances, get them in order, stop ordering those bloody takeaways.
Okay.
If there's something that you can do about it, then do your best to do it. And then the other step being trigger desensitization. So maybe with the exposure stuff, so you can actually if it's being alone at home, then put yourself in that situation. If that's the trigger, then try to obviously desensitize. And then the other one is to just acknowledge if there's nothing that you can do, if it's something that you can't prevent, if it's something that maybe you can't put yourself into desensitize, then just acknowledge that whatever it is that's triggering, that's the reason that you're feeling anxiety after it. So once you actually start to recognize that, okay, there is a reason for this fear or this anxiety now, then maybe it helps you just learn that, I guess, or you're in no danger, as we've said a million times. You know, the more that you do have to face that trigger, the less that you will react, hopefully.
Yeah. Those are all really good points. You're probably right. So you can desensitize and do a little bit of exposure on some of your triggers, but I think a lot of it has to do with just recognizing that it's normal for me to be upset about something. You know, if you make a mistake at work and you get called on the carpet for it, and that's stressful. It's normal, and I think we make the mistake of trying to get into the situation where I want to have no anxiety, no stress. That'll be the solution here, and that's just not normal. If you're alive, you're going to feel stressed sometimes.
We spoke about this a long time ago, triggers and stuff, and I remember actually saying back to you, like, this was probably 5-6 years ago, and sometimes I was saying that maybe for me, the anxiety is sort of a distraction from the stress. So if I've got financial troubles or if something's really bothering me, then I'll feel more anxious. And maybe that's like just my mind's way of telling me, let's not think about the bills. Let's think about how you're feeling right now.
Yeah.
I don't know whether there's maybe other people that could relate to that.
Huh. That's an interesting perspective on that. The anxiety becomes a shield against the stressful events.
Yeah. It's almost like a protection mechanism, but it's not protecting me. It's making me feel worse.
Right.
I'd rather pay the bills.
Thing and throw a worse thing in front of it. Yeah. But that makes some sort of sense. And sometimes those things happen, we don't even know it. Right? We don't even know what's happening. So that's interesting, because sometimes then, especially if you're still in that situation where you're going to sort of wrap yourself in your anxiety and use it as a, like, well, I can't do that. I can't deal with that now because of my anxiety.
Yeah.
Then you kind of are protected. Like that situation gets pushed off.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's actually really good. That's a lot of good insight right there. Well done.
Is that it? Are we done?
That's it. We're done. You answered it right there. We're 6 minutes in where it's all over.
Again,
you blew the lid right off it. So I think when people, I think the question that Gary was asking, and that Cody asked me also, was like, is this normal? I think, is it normal to feel that way? And yes, it is normal to feel that way. It's just, I think it will get better, as you start to make forward progress and you're working on this, you're doing your exposure, you're working on your coping skills, and, you're feeling more in control of your anxiety or not afraid of the anxiety. I think the fear response to those other things also goes away too.
Yeah.
So I could say that I shared a lot of your triggers back then. Then, like, what are my triggers now? Let me think about that. Most of my triggers now are, I think, I'm really sleep deprived, and I don't sleep a lot as it is. But if I get really run down, I'm much more likely to have an anxious day. For sure. When I am, which is, okay, so I'm tired. Why does tired equal anxious? I still don't know.
Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah. Or we can go back a couple episodes, like I was mentioning before we went live here. My ears are plugged up again. So I had a sinus infection. That's gone, but my stupid ears are plugged up again. And that can contribute to feeling a little bit unsteady because of the fluid in your ears. That adds anxiety for me. So it's strange. And there's probably another 50 people in a 10-mile radius that have plugged up ears right now. They're not feeling anxious about it.
It's weird, isn't it?
It's frustrating. I don't like it. I'm angry, but.
Well, I was saying before we went live that I had a real odd day a couple of days ago. I woke up in the morning, and as soon as I opened my eyes, I just felt this uneasy, like a flustery feeling. I know exactly why it happened now, but the trigger was that I'd forgot to take my propranolol, which is a medication, but we're not doing medication today. But I forgot to take it the night before. So whether it actually made me feel physically different. I don't know, or whether it was like a mental thing. But as soon as I woke up, I just thought to myself, "Dang, I'd forgot my meds." I don't know whether they help. That's another topic for another day. But it was just that immediate response, and then for the whole day, like I got up, I had the pill. It made no difference to how I felt at the time.
Right.
You know, it's not that fast acting. You don't neck it and you feel great.
Yeah.
But for the rest of the day, I just felt on edge. I felt uneasy, just as if like there was panic just around the corner, and I couldn't shake it.
Yeah.
But I didn't actually reach panic. It didn't escalate that far, so I don't know whether anything I did.
Right.
But that was a trigger for me. Was just forgetting to take the bloody medication, even though it wasn't something that I'd really thought about.
Right.
It was just that feeling that I had, whether it was because I hadn't or because my mind was thinking you didn't, and it just played on me.
That's interesting. And so
Yeah.
did you think about the meds first? I forgot my meds, and then you felt anxious, or did you wake up feeling anxious and then remember you forgot your meds?
I honestly can't remember what order. I honestly don't know.
Happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just maybe because it's the blink of an eye, and it's what comes first, the thought or the feeling.
That's
I
true.
honestly don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's one way, sometimes it's the other.
Yeah. I don't know. So what do we do about these triggers? I think the advice on how to deal with triggers is the same as every other bit of advice that we offer. So the trigger is just, okay, it's what may lead you down that path. That's fine. So really, it's the same advice as the anxiety that comes, out of the blue. People say, it came out of the blue, it came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
All right. Well, whether it comes out of nowhere or it comes because of something, you got a notice in the mail, you have an overdue bill or something, you're having money troubles, whatever it is, you had a fight with your wife or, whatever, it doesn't really matter. In the end, you still have to deal with it the same exact way. And
Exactly.
right. What a lot of people wind up doing, I think, is they start to avoid the triggers.
Yeah.
And so triggers becomes part and parcel of what turns anxiety into an anxiety disorder, because when you start to avoid your triggers, if your triggers are driving, then you stop driving. If your trigger is being at work, then you quit your job. Your trigger is being at school, you stop going to school. And that is when it becomes lifestyle altering, like we've talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's difficult. So you have to deal with, regardless of the source of the anxiety, whether it's one of your triggers that you're aware of or it just seems to be in the background or comes out of the blue, the response is the same.
Would we say that, like, because there's going to be people maybe watching this now or listening and thinking that they just feel anxious all the time. So, like, how can there be a 24/7 trigger? But my response to that would be that they're perhaps just, like, oversensitized.
Yes.
So perhaps those triggers have put you in this place. Your body's oversensitized. Your mind doesn't stop. So that would explain why you feel like that.
I think that's
most
true.
of the time. Yeah.
And I think what winds up happening, I think I have a blog post on my site about this too, about triggers. As we go further into it, and you're having anxiety issues and they're getting worse, if you feel like you're on a downward slide and they're getting worse and your world is getting smaller, you just start to accumulate triggers. Your bag of triggers gets more and more full. Like everything starts to become a trigger after a while.
Yeah.
So when everything is a trigger, in a way, the ultimate trigger is your anxiety itself triggers more anxiety. So you quickly go down that slope where, like, driving is a trigger, being on the phone is a trigger, watching the news is a trigger, going on Facebook is a trigger. Like, everything becomes a trigger, and then your anxiety itself feeds itself, and that becomes your own trigger. As crazy as it sounds. And I think
it makes sense.
Yeah, so when somebody feels like, well, I'm just anxious 24/7, I don't have a trigger. Yeah, well, the fact that you're noticing that you're anxious 24/7 tells me that the anxiety
that is the trigger.
Is the trigger for more anxiety. It fuels
I think
itself.
that's probably where I go from. I go between that and having actual triggers, and then triggering myself. That's where I feel like I get to. I think I've only ever been out of that once, and that was like probably 4 or 5 years ago, maybe more. Yeah.
It's funny because the word triggers appears to be everywhere now too.
Triggered.
Yeah. My kids were making jokes about being triggered the other day. And I'm like,
I did a video on people being triggered. Yeah, people being triggered by them nutters, the sweets called nutters. Yeah.
And I'm not even sure what we're talking about. It's just a commentary on, I guess, what's going on in the media right now. But here, well, everybody's triggered by everything our president says. Like, I know he's a character, but it's just Like, what is
It
triggered?
is. It's everywhere. Yeah.
What is triggered?
People are triggered.
Your anger is triggered. Your sense of disenfranchisement is triggered. Your anxiety is triggered. And it leads that the use of the word trigger, I think, is part of, we talked about anxiety sort of in the mainstream and how it may be, maybe watering it down. So there was an article that I saw yesterday in the New York Times that one of my Facebook friends posted. First of all, it was a marathon article. It took me 5 minutes to read it. I mean, who reads 5-minute newspaper articles?
You got too much time in your hands.
Man. It's crazy. So, but it was about the prevalence or the increased prevalence of anxiety among American teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And it talked about, there was a fairly decent discussion about triggers and how anything negative for these kids appears to trigger anxiety. So I think the point is that for our discussion, it's super easy to become so sensitized that just everything you see. When I was at my worst, I couldn't watch the news. I could not watch the news. Like, oh, there was a flood in the Philippines. It would right over the edge. It was bad news. It was actually literally bad news.
I will just say I used to watch Alex Jones to fall asleep. I don't know if
Alex Jones, the InfoWars guy, right?
Yeah.
He's crazy, that guy.
Yeah, if you don't like watching news, don't watch that.
Don't watch Alex. Yeah, I've seen snippets of him here and there. He's a total conspiracy theorist guy, right?
Yeah.
That's got to be exciting.
It's fun.
It's fun. For anxiety.
Keeps you busy.
Yeah.
Keeps your mind busy.
We're not recommending Alex Jones, by the way.
No.
And I'm going to go on a limb here. If you're watching Alex Jones and you think he's right, probably stop watching because you might not be smart enough to understand what we're saying.
I'm
just saying.
It's never going to be a good thing.
Anyway. Yeah, maybe we should edit that out. I don't know.
Nah, we'll leave it.
We'll leave it. What the hell, right? We need subscribers and viewers.
Let's ruffle some feathers.
So, anyway, that's triggers. Yes, everything can become a trigger. How do you stop it? So how do we eliminate triggers? What do we do to make the list smaller instead of bigger?
So, obviously, the things that you can control, take control. Or if you can pass it off and let somebody else control it, then let them. Because some people do try and take on too much. Because perfectionism, that's a common trait of people that suffer with anxiety. They never feel good enough or, what they're doing is not good enough. But if you can share the jobs. Yeah. And take control of the things that you can. And the things that you can't, just, there ain't no point in worrying about those. That's the thing.
Yes, I think that's true. I would probably add to that the way to make your trigger list smaller is to just get better in general.
Yeah. Well, we've discussed that many times, haven't we, recently? Healthy eating, exercise, something that I just am useless with, sticking to these routines. Although I will add, I am still off the caffeine.
Nice. Good job.
And I feel no symptoms, no weird weaknesses or headaches or nothing like that, so it's got to be a positive.
Yeah, that's.
But then I was sitting me and my wife were making tea the other day, British tea, and I was just saying to her should I have a caffeine one because I feel a bit edgy? Maybe I just need a caffeine kick.
Yeah.
And then I thought to myself, well, there's no positive from caffeine. There's no reason that my body needs a bit of caffeine. No. You know what I mean? So it's not as if it's like a vitamin deficiency.
Yeah, you're caffeine deficient.
Yeah. So I just thought to myself, no, let's just carry on. Yeah. Stick with it.
Yeah.
And
how did it work out? Fine, right?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. It's all good. Still there.
Well, that's good. I think the other thing, so yes, eating healthy and exercise and all the things that we've been talking about, doing your exposure, not backing down, learning to relax, all of these things. And triggers are just like any other facet of anxiety. If you think it's a trigger, you're going to have to do it anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you should immerse yourself into every trigger at the same time, but you can use them as points for exposure work also. If you're triggered by watching the news, and many people are, watch a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
You can get over them that way too. But I think what you find is if you naturally start working toward making forward progress overall, the list of triggers will get smaller. They still might stress you out. If somebody cuts me off on the road, I mean, I'm still pounding on the steering wheel and saying bad words and yelling at them. That's just
yeah.
It doesn't lead to, oh my God, now I'm having anxiety.
Yeah.
It's angry and then it's over. And you'll get back to that normal state where you might be stressed out, but it doesn't turn into fear.
I was just going to mention, you just reminded me, like another trigger maybe could actually be like excitement, because that can actually trigger people's anxiety because
Yes.
the feelings and the emotions are so similar, aren't they? That's
Yes.
like when people get excited. Imagine if you won the lottery right now, you would probably feel exactly the same as you would mid panic. Same chemicals, same adrenaline.
That is very true.
Mm.
And I've heard many people say that what has helped them is to remember that. Like when I'm feeling panicky and anxious, well, this is the same way I might feel if I just got news that I won the lottery, or
Yeah, yeah.
it's
Mm.
true. The physical sensations are the same. So there can
Mm.
be positive triggers too.
Mm. Mm.
I've seen that. I've actually, when I was at my worst, there were times when even really happy things like would put me over the top, and suddenly
Yeah, yeah.
having a freaking panic attack. I was just having this great time. So
Mm.
that's a really positive. That's a good point. Triggers aren't always negative things. Even positive things could lead to that.
I noticed because, like, I'm a massive UFC fan, so
Yeah.
we're bringing so many different angles in here
That's all
today.
right. Yeah.
But like when I'm watching like a main event, if it's something I'm really hyped for, then I usually get up. I don't sit on the sofa to watch it. I stand behind the sofa because I am so like the energy that
Yeah,
I've
you get
got,
your
and like
stuff.
I feel really nervous about it,
Yeah.
and it feels like anxiety. But I know I'm able to make that distinction that I know
Sure.
that I'm excited. Yeah, it's weird. Whereas if there was nothing on TV and I was feeling like that standing there, I'd start questioning
It's
what's
somehow
going on.
negative. It's
Yeah, yeah,
context. It's all in the
yeah,
context. And so that's
yeah,
another
yeah.
good way to think of triggers. Like, oh my, my boss just yelled at me. Like, well,
Mm,
okay, but take it out of the. It is all in the context. Like those same feelings could happen, like you said, in a positive environment. So maybe
mm,
sometimes flip it. I used to have to do that
yeah, yeah.
sometimes.
Mm,
Like, all right, if I was watching, I do the same thing with. Well, I'm not so much these days, but I was a huge ice hockey fan.
mm-hmm.
And I can remember, in American football, the New York Giants, and when they won their last two Super Bowls, they were nail biters, and I remember like
Yeah.
pacing around
Mm,
watching the game, just like, oh my, just let it be over, let it be over, let it. Trying to
yeah,
that
yeah,
they win. Same exact feeling as if I
yeah.
was
It's mad.
panicking. Yeah,
Yeah,
except it was fun. So strange.
strange that our minds don't even like. It's odd.
It's all in the interpretation. So
Yeah, yeah,
much of it is in the interpretation, not the sensation or the thought or the feeling, but the interpretation.
yeah, yeah.
So much
Too.
of it.
So there,
So that's triggers. We've done
we
22
nailed them.
minutes on triggers. I think so. If anybody has questions, boy, I'll keep them coming. I guess. Do you want to take some questions that we've seen over the last week?
We've got a few questions.
Sure.
Let's have a look. Question number 1 was from Olivia, and it was to me. Did I ever get to go bowling?
That's good. That's really
No,
good.
I didn't. And we still talk about it, and we still say, yeah, we need to go and do that, but I haven't. It's bad.
I'm going to use my phone to look at my questions, so apologies for that.
That's all right.
So
no.
the bowling. You got to get
No
bowling,
bowling.
dude. You have to bring a
No,
camera.
no.
At least we're gonna have to show a picture if there's no video.
No, if I do go, there will be footage.
There'll be video.
There will be footage. But I haven't done anything, to be honest. I mean, since I did the last exposure video where I went for breakfast, I've barely been out.
Yeah.
It's been weird. It's been a real, I don't know, I just haven't felt too sharp. I feel a bit low mood. But it's normal. I'm not questioning it.
That's fine.
Let me have a look.
Yeah. I had a
here's
question. Okay, you first.
Go on.
Then I'll do
No,
it.
you.
Okay,
Go on.
so I had one
Take it in
from
turns.
Ronald. How's it going, Ron? He asked me on Saturday. I have one last question regarding recovery. Did you wake up one morning and you just had no symptoms, or was it more gradual over time? And the answer to that is absolutely was gradual. I didn't wake up one morning and say, hey, no more anxiety. What I found was I would wake up, and mornings were really difficult for me. I would have a hard time staying asleep. I'd wind up waking up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, couldn't go back to sleep, and I would just lay there and just marinate in anxiety. And what I found is the first sign that things were getting better for me was I wouldn't wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd wake up a little later and a little later, a little later. And when I woke up, I didn't feel that, or when I would feel the horrible morning anxiety, as soon as I opened my eyes, I would be able to say, you know what, by noon, this is going to be better.
Yeah.
And then it would be better by noon. And then my morning anxiety started to go away. It was a gradual thing over time. It wasn't like, I'm cured,
Yeah.
Happen. I wish it did, but that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So
it's incidentally like the same kind of thing happened for me, but to go the other way, when I was feeling better, to actually go back downhill was a lot quicker than getting up the hill in the first place.
You know what? That's a good point, and that's just the way it is. I kind of feel like we got gypped a little bit in terms of like how our brains work from the factory. You can learn, you know, and I've used the example of like being afraid of dogs, for instance. You can learn to be afraid of dogs in 3 minutes. If a dog bites you, bam, you have a phobia of dogs. Very possible. But it could take you 3 weeks or 3 months to back out of that.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's not fair. But so you want to grab it?
Yes. This is from Crav163. How do you get to not care when going out is so traumatic? That was the basic gist of the question. So how do you reach that point where you just don't care how you feel anymore? You know, whether panic comes or not.
Okay, that's a reasonable question. I'll start that one.
Go on.
The first thing you do is stop talking about how traumatic it is. And I said this to someone else in a Facebook discussion too last week. The very first thing you have to do is stop talking about how traumatic it is. That's a judgment. It's an interpretation. It has negative connotation. It's not traumatic. I feel so when you go out the door and you feel badly, the statement is, well, I feel like crap. This sucks. I hate this. I feel badly. That's it. Done. That's the interpretation. That's the acknowledgement of it. It's not traumatic. It's not horrible. It's not crippling. It's not awful. Stop. We have to stop doing that, I think, first. And that's the first step in not caring. So when you're already convinced that going out is traumatic.
Yeah.
Just a parking spot behind me. When you are convinced that going out is traumatic, that's a horrible negative judgment, then it becomes hard not to care about that because nobody wants to be traumatized.
Yeah. It almost sets you up, doesn't it? It sets you up with that.
It does set
painting that negative picture.
And sadly, the major way that you get to not care is to do it anyway. So call it traumatic if you will, and then do it anyway. Unfortunately, I don't have a better answer than that. Sooner or later, you have to just do it anyway. And if you're not willing to do that, then it will continue to be traumatic, and you'll always care how you feel. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think it's traumatic.
It's traumatic. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not. I'm not trying to minimize that. So
no, I understand.
You're angry at me and like, oh,
exactly.
You don't remember. Like I remember when it felt like the end of the world. But,
of course you do.
Of course I do. But sooner or later, the only way to not care is to start doing it anyway, and like really do it the right way, not white knuckling, relaxing, all the things we talked about, and then suddenly you discover like this isn't hurting me.
And there's probably evidence that we've all got. Like everybody that's watching this has had times where they've achieved and they felt good about themselves and felt a progress.
Right.
So exactly what you're saying is true. It's just that maybe we stumbled or there was a setback or we stopped pushing ourselves, and that's why we go back down that path. That's what I do. Whereas you continued on the path.
Well, I think sooner or later, what it comes down to is, I'm going to use a ridiculous sexist term, but sooner or later, you man up and you just keep doing it. And you build on that victory. Like, wow, that felt so good. I'm going to do it again right now. So the best advice I could give, you want to get to the point where you don't care how you feel. Just keep doing it over and over and over immediately, one right after another. So when you have a victory, build on it immediately. Right that minute, go out the door again. Don't go back, sit on the sofa, and pat yourself on the back about how good it feels. That's good for 5 minutes. And get dressed and get back out the door again for another 5 minutes. And then you will learn not to care how you feel.
You make me feel bad.
I don't need to make you. I'm sorry, dude. I'm not trying to make
no,
you
no.
But you can.
It's what people need. It's what you need to hear. Yeah. It's what you need to. Well, it's not really what you need to hear. It's what you need to freaking do at the end of the day.
That's exactly right. And sometimes we get stuck. And I was stuck there before I started making my progress. And I know I have to do this. I know I have to do this. I know I have to do this. In fact, I was on at the stupid new webcam. I went on Facebook Live Friday night just to play with it. And I had a couple of people ask questions. And somebody asked, what? And I said, what was the turning point? I said, well, I just started doing things different. Well, what did you do different? Well, really nothing. I just did the things that I knew I had to do. So in the end, that's how you learn not to care how you feel.
If you remember, I don't know if you will remember this, but when we did the podcast years and years ago, I said I was going to try the Yes Man thing. Do you remember that? You hadn't seen the movie, the Jim Carrey movie, Yes Man?
I've never seen Yes Man, no.
Where he gets dragged into this cult sort of thing where people are only allowed to say yes. So whatever anybody asks, the answer has to be yes.
Yeah.
And if you remember, like years and years ago, I started doing that. And just like my daughter was asking if I'd go to Viking Day at her school.
I remember now.
Yeah. When I said immediately, I just said yes to her
Yep.
because we'd reached a point where she was no longer asking me to go and do stuff because she knew that I was always going to say no.
Yeah.
So she'd ask her mom or she'd ask my dad or whatever. And then one day she just asked me, and I just said, I made a decision. Yes, man, let's do this. And then I just used it. I felt like crap at the end of like a couple of weeks of doing it, but that's because I was so sensitized. But if I'd have continued,
Right.
I probably wouldn't be sitting here doing this now because I'd be, I don't know,
Yeah.
on the moon.
And you would be also exhausted. It's hard work. You will feel very tired and worn out and that sort of stuff. And
I think that's what
sprinkle some
stops
rest in
people.
there too.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. And you have to use your best judgment. Like when you're working hard at that, it's exhausting. There's no doubt about that. So you got to build in some downtime and some rest time for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I know that was a rambling.
Yes, man.
Consider that question, but I like that.
Just do that. That's the project for the week for the viewers is to just say yes.
Yeah.
Just say yes. Well, within reason. Don't go breaking the law and stuff. You know.
Who wants to rob a bank? Yeah, I'm in.
Yes. You know.
Do you have any others?
Let's have a look. It was a really long one, which I don't know whether I can be bothered to read out, which is so bad. Wow. This one's from Sarah Bishop. She has a terrible cold or a cough for a month. She's been to the doctor, has no chest infection, so no medication. However, it's made anxiety more difficult to deal with because they're feeling genuinely ill, but constantly questioning whether the symptoms are the illness or anxiety, and it's exhausting. So this was a question from the health anxiety one.
Right.
So it's, it's all about just accepting that this is a cold or whatever it is, and it is just that, and that's it.
Yeah, and yeah, in a way that we talked about that in that episode.
Yeah. I mean, there's no other way to go about it.
It's so difficult. It's all mental.
And just maybe accept that you will feel more exhausted anyway because you run down. So your body's working harder to fight whatever infection you've got. Yeah. So maybe, take a bit of rest, but just accept that it's a cold.
Yeah,
and allow time to pass, innit? I mean, look, 2 weeks ago I was sniffling and freaking about, is this something worse than a cold? Right. Why do I feel so tired? Look at me now.
Healthy as a horse.
Yes.
I love it. Out there kicking ass and taking names.
Oh, yeah.
That's great. I'm about out. I don't really have. I have a couple, but we'll talk about them off the air and probably turn them into actual topics for episodes.
Okay.
So, if you got any more you want to throw out there?
I have got one other one. I'm just reading through it.
Okay.
You can sing for a minute.
Yes, that's what everybody wants me to do.
Yep.
I sound like I have a good singing voice, don't I?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, sure. Nobody wants me to sing, trust me.
No. So this one was it's from Ruth, and she was talking about symptoms and restless emotions, racing thoughts, but the physical symptoms continue. Feeling like she was going to pass out, severe headaches, dizziness, lightheadedness, tingling. There are times when she feels like she's really going to black out. It happens at stores, while driving, while walking. What's the explanation for this? And why can't she get a handle on the physical symptoms? So we're back. But she's on Zoloft and Valium and wants to avoid going to the ER.
Sure. Well, the first thing is it feels like I'm going to pass out.
It's the key word.
Feels like.
Words.
So the question is, have you ever actually passed out? And the answer is probably no. It feels like I'm going to fall over because I'm dizzy. Have you ever actually fallen over and not been able to get up? The answer is probably no. I've been there. You've been there. I think not being able to get a handle on the physical sensations is is an indicator that you still haven't really accepted them as
Yeah.
harmless.
Yeah.
I don't know if you would agree with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, or expecting them to go away. They only, it's the same thing as anything else. They only go away when you stop caring about them. And if you're still focused on how you're feeling and engaging in an inner dialogue with yourself about how you feel, is this okay? Is that okay? Does this hurt more? Does that hurt more? Do I feel like I'm going to pass out? Do I feel like this? Do I feel like I'm having a heart attack? If you're still engaging in that inner dialogue and focusing on how you feel, then you probably haven't fully accepted that you're okay.
Yeah, because the way that it's the cycle, isn't it? If you have that sensation and it makes you feel anxious, then you're likely to have either that sensation or another one because of the physical effects of the anxiety. So the chemicals that are running through your body, it's going to make something else.
Right.
And then you're going to freak out about that. And then you're going to feel anxious, and then you're going to do it again. And that's why it's called the fear cycle, isn't it?
And I mean, sometimes we forget anxiety is a physiological state. It is a physical state of being.
Yeah.
You have an increased level of adrenaline in your bloodstream, and that comes with all kinds of effects. And dizziness is one of them, and shaky legs is one of them, and the rapid heart rate is one of them. And
I think we should perhaps maybe do an episode where we talk about maybe, like, we know why the symptoms happen, but just go through the symptoms just so people can...
Yeah.
Maybe we do something, it maybe will help people just understand that they're normal reactions to the stress, to the anxiety,
We should do that. That would be a good way to
It's just it. But there is a condition to us doing that video, is that you watch that and then you never watch another freaking symptom video or post in another forum about a symptom.
Yeah, has anybody ever felt?
Yes.
We could do a whole episode just on seeking reassurance.
Well, I'm going to do a video on Facebook groups. Yeah. We've mentioned this before, but there's so many negative. But just one thing I'm just going to mention. There was a question, and it's reignited the fire in me to do the Facebook group video. Yeah. And the question was, it had, when you get the nice backgrounds on the Facebook things, so you can put all lovely gradients.
Oh, yeah.
What is the best way to commit suicide? That was the question. And I'm like, oh my days.
Holy cow, seriously?
Yeah, that was the question. Big bold letters in a group with like 40,000 members. What is the best way to commit suicide? But I didn't respond on there, but I was thinking like, well, the people that did the best way are probably dead by now anyway. So they're not going to be able to answer. And by best, what did they actually mean? Like, what's the most enjoyable way?
Right.
That's what I just couldn't get my head around, why somebody would think that was any way appropriate to post in a group of anxiety.
Yeah.
Just bizarre. There was another one saying, is anybody else having problems with EE because I can't make calls on my phone? That was another one in an anxiety group. I'm like,
I think, you know what, though, that's interesting. And we'll definitely talk about that. We have got to do a couple episodes that's focus on social media.
Yeah.
But I've seen that. And I think sometimes it's because a few of the groups that I am an admin on and things, I think people get so comfortable in those groups. Those become their friends and their support system that they just go there for anything.
It seemed that way.
I'm making a souffle. How long do I keep it in the oven? What? And it's always strange because as an admin, there have been times we've had to like put our heads together with the other admins and say, we can't really allow this because it pushes real things down past the fold. And it's tough, but I get that. I'm going to just a real quick one for that to follow up on that last question. Right now, even as we're doing this podcast, I mentioned before that my ears are plugged up. So my ears are sloshing around. You see me come and hold my nose and do the clearing my ears thing a little bit during this thing. So right now, I am actually feeling a little bit dizzy because of the fluid in my ears.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm feeling dizzy.
Oh, is that it?
So the point is, that does trigger a little bit of anxiety. So if I have to measure my anxiety level from a scale of 0 to 10, I would say I'm a 2 right now, not 0. And I'm a 2 because I'm feeling a little bit dizzy. So when I move my head or move my, I'm feeling it takes me a second to get oriented back.
Mm-hmm.
I probably feel the same way as the person who asked you the question about not getting a hold on physical symptoms. It feels a little unsteady. It feels like I'm going to fall over. The room spins for just half a second or so, and then it stops. What's the difference between the fact that I'm standing here calmly talking to you in a podcast, feeling that way, or feeling that way and trying to do something about it? or
Yeah, yeah.
reacting to it in fear. So
Well, that's the difference. You're not reaching for water or mints or
right.
calling a friend or reacting to, yeah.
So the advice I'm going to offer on that, how do you get past the physical symptoms? Acknowledge it. Yes, I feel dizzy, and I'm just going to slowly and deliberately keep doing what it is I'm doing. If I'm walking down the street, I'm just going to keep walking down the street because I felt that way 1,000 times. I've never fallen over. I've never passed out. I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to do it slowly and deliberately, and I'm going to be soft in the face of that symptom, not hard.
Yeah.
I'm not going to fight it or brace or anything. I'm going to relax into that and just slowly and deliberately go about what I'm doing. So practically, that's the best advice I can offer on how can I get a hold of my physical symptoms. Let them be there and just keep doing what you want to do anyway.
That's it.
So there you go. What else we got?
I'm done with questions,
45 minutes. I think we're done for this week. I wonder, have we looked at our stats? Do people watch the whole videos? I know.
I daren't look.
Yeah, I never watch to see if people go the whole way. These are longer and longer as we go.
I know one person who watches them all. Me. I always watch it back.
Whenever I send you the video, you watch it back. I almost never watch us. I don't know why.
I have to, just in case.
Critique,
Yeah, that's it.
Well, Billy also makes the thumbnails for these, so you have to find that perfect thumbnail. Maybe that's I'll give you one.
I don't know if you like. Yeah. Do it again, and I'll.
Very good. Okay, I guess we're done. So next week we'll be back again with another one. The way we're doing this, just so people know, it's Thursday morning right now. We record on a Thursday morning, or Thursday morning in the U.S., Thursday afternoon for Billy.
Yes.
So we record on Thursdays, and we seem to publish on Tuesdays. So it's good.
It gives you a couple of days to, if you've got any questions that you want answering next week, you can post them on this video. It'll give us a couple of days to drum up some answers.
Exactly, and then answer them in the next video. So
also I know we've just slated Facebook groups, but your group is not one of those. It's a good one. How do we find it?
Okay, so it is. I will post it in the video description. I don't remember the URL. It's one of those crazy Facebook URLs. But if you go to facebook.com/thatanxietyguy, I think there's a link to the group right there. And there's maybe 50 people or so. But I'll put it in the video description on this one too.
Sounds good.
So if you want,
also,
everybody's welcome.
Just something for me personally. It's not a plug at all. No, I was going to say, if somebody else is doing YouTube videos, if they're doing exposure therapy, anything like that, then I always like sitting and having a look, watching other people progress and stuff. So if anybody wants to share a channel link in the comments or anything like that, don't be afraid. We're not going to remove your comment. If you want to share a channel, do.
I'm with you on that.
So we can just have a look, and maybe, if people want to bounce ideas, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm totally good with that too. Yeah, Billy's channel, my channel, wherever. It's all good. I'm a huge fan of success stories. Giant fan of that.
Yeah.
So even, and I don't mean hey, I'm cured, anything. Hey, today I made it to, school.
Yeah.
Or whatever. I picked my kid up off the bus. Share it. Those are great. I think some of the best things that we could do online, and I think you and I would both agree, one of the things we're trying to accomplish here is if we could build a community around these videos and podcasts, it would be one of encouragement and inspiration.
Positivity, yeah, definitely.
Cheerleading for each other as opposed to just comparing symptoms and, wallowing in it. So
100%.
Yeah, bring it. All right. AnxietyUnited.com to find Billy, of course, as always. ThatAnxietyGuy.com to find me. That Anxiety Guy on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff. Keep the questions and comments coming. They're getting good.
We're getting there.
Yeah, I like it. So
we're building up some speed here.
We totally are building up some speed. It's been good.
Yes.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.
We're out.